The wind whispered through the field one quiet day, and I stood there alone until it brought my family back. I live in a small house just outside Lincoln, Nebraska, where the fields stretch wide and the sky feels big. It was a calm October morning in 2023 when I stood on my porch, holding a cup of tea. The air felt still, and the house was quiet with only the creak of the floor keeping me company. I looked out at the field across the road, a place where I used to hear the wind with my son years ago. Now it felt empty, and the silence reminded me of David, who left in 2015 after we argued. This field wasn't just land to me, it was family. My husband, James, used to walk there with me and David, the wind blowing soft while we laughed. I'd hold David's hand, and James would point at the clouds. Those days kept us close, full of simple joy, but when James passed, things changed. David stayed near for a while, helping me tend the flowers, until 2015 when he turned 35. I said something harsh about moving on without James, and he took it wrong, leaving for Omaha with a short goodbye. The wind stopped feeling the same after that. The stillness grew heavy, and I set my tea down, staring at the empty field. I wanted to hear that wind again, to feel those old days, so I stepped off the porch and walked across the road. My shoes sank a little in the soft dirt, but I kept going, needing to find something lost. I stood in the middle, closed my eyes, and listened, hoping the breeze would bring back what I missed. My heart ached for David, and I pulled out my phone to send him a message. "I'm in the field. I miss you." He didn't answer, and the quiet hurt more. I took a deep breath and stayed there, letting the faint wind touch my face. David used to run here as a boy, chasing the breeze with a big smile. Now he was gone, and I wondered if he still remembered. I decided to wait a little longer, not knowing why, but feeling I had to. The field stayed calm, and I knew this wasn't just about the wind. It was about family coming home. The Lincoln sun hung low that October afternoon in 2023, shining soft over the field as I stood in the middle, feeling the faint breeze on my skin. I closed my eyes, and the sound took me back to old times. This field held years of family love. My husband, James, used to stand here with me and David, the wind blowing gentle through the grass while we thumped along. I'd watch David run, and James would laugh at the clouds above. Those days kept us tight, full of happy noise, but 2015 broke it all. David and I fought after I said something dumb about letting James go, and he left for Omaha, thinking I didn't need him anymore. Now, with the wind picking up, I opened my eyes, feeling the past so close. James used to call David our little kite, always flying high. I wanted him back, and this field could be the way. I pulled out my phone again and sent another message. "David, I'm here where we used to be. Please come." The screen stayed blank, and my chest felt tight. He hadn't answered since 2015, and his silence grew bigger every year. I walked a little farther, the grass brushing my legs, and thought of those windy days in 1988. David was just a boy, chasing the breeze while I held his kite string. James would sit with me, his hand on mine, and we'd talk about nothing big, just happy things. Now the field was quiet, and I wondered if David still heard that wind wherever he was. I stopped by a tall patch of grass and sat down, letting the air move around me. I said to myself, he might not come, but I'll wait today. The breeze grew stronger, rustling the field, and I stayed still, hoping he'd feel it too. I needed to tell him I was wrong, that I missed him every day. The sun sank lower, and I knew this wasn't just about waiting. It was about holding on to family, no matter how long it took. The Lincoln field glowed gold that October evening in 2023, wind rustling through the grass as I sat on the soft ground, waiting with a heavy heart. I had been there since morning, listening for the breeze that once brought me close to David. The sun sank low, painting the sky orange, and I felt the quiet press down harder. Then I heard footsteps behind me, soft but sure, crunching on the dry grass. I turned around. My son David stood there, tall and quiet, his hands in his pockets. He looked at me and said, "Mom, what are you doing here?" I stood up slow, my knees stiff, and replied, "I'm waiting for you. I've missed you." He stepped closer, but his face grew tight. "Missed me? You didn't need me back then. In 2015, you said to move on." His voice shook with hurt. I felt my chest tighten, the pain from 5 years ago rushing back when he left after we fought. I said, "I never meant it like that. I was wrong. I needed you then, and I need you now." He snapped, "Need me? You pushed me away after Dad died. I thought I failed you." His words cut deep, and I saw the boy who'd run with me in this field, lost when James passed. I took a step toward him. "I failed you, David. I didn't know how to keep us close without him." He shook his head. "I left because I couldn't stay. You didn't see me." The wind picked up, blowing strong around us, and I felt tears sting my eyes. I said, "I saw you every day in my mind. I came here to feel you again." He looked away, silent, and the field grew tense with old hurt. I thought he might leave again, but he stayed, staring at the grass. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn book. He said, "I got your message, Mom. It brought me here today. I didn't know you'd be waiting." I frowned. "My message?" He opened the book, his voice low. "I wrote this in 1988. It's about those days with you and Dad, the wind, the kites. I kept it all this time." My eyes widened. "You wrote that?" He nodded. "I wanted to say sorry for leaving, but I didn't know how. I came to fly a kite, like we did." I smiled through tears. "You remembered." He pulled out a kite from his bag and tried to fly it, but the string tangled, and it flopped into a bush. He chuckled. "I'm still bad at this." I laughed softly, just like old times. The small laugh broke the heavy air, and I felt the wind wrap us close. I said, "You, me, we're here." He looked at me, eyes soft. "I thought I lost you, Mom. I'm back now." The field grew calm. His smile built a bridge, family tied by wind and love. The Lincoln dusk faded to dark that October night in 2023. My small house warm with soft voices as David sat across from me, the little book open on the table. He had stayed after we left the field, walking back with me under the stars. Sarah, my daughter-in-law, came over from Omaha with a pot of soup. She smiled. "David said he'd be here." I brought food. Plates clinked as we ate, and I sat with a mug of tea, feeling light after 7 years apart. David turned a page and said, "Mom, I missed you." He had stayed close. That evening he said, "Mom, I read your message. I had to come back." We sat with tea steaming in quiet words, then read. Sarah hugged him. "Good to have you back." The wind outside hummed low, family whole with talk and soup. George, our neighbor, poked his head in. "Helen, house sounds lively tonight." I smiled. "David's here. Takes more than years to stop us." David looked up. "In 2015, I left because I failed you. I thought you didn't want me." Sarah stirred cream into her coffee. "I thought you forgot us." She nodded. "He's the best." He smiled. "Best. In 2010, I lost Dad. I thought I'd let you down. I stayed quiet too long." I chuckled. "Let us down. We're stronger than that." Sarah laughed. James used to spill soup on me. David grinned. He'd love this me here. The house buzzed. George told old tales. Sarah poured soup. The night felt full, roots deep through the years. Later, alone, I stood by the window. The wind felt warm. David said. I stayed quiet too long. James's laugh rang in my head. A gap closed by wind, family strong. Love and time all we need.